You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Happy Monday. Welcome to my show. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Go on over there to Odyssey Radio. You can listen to this show there live, and you can see all the different outlets where this show plays. And also check out the schedule. See all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. And if you're just listening audibly, you can come over to my YouTube channel, where, of course, we every night broadcast the simulcast of this show in video. And so go on over there to my YouTube channel, join the other Intrepids in the live chat, and that's over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And I want to welcome you to tonight's show. There is something that has bugged me a lot lately, and by bugging me, let me get into that, and I'll explain what I mean by this. This isn't so much a rant or a gripe session or complaining, but there's something that bothers me about social media that I want to address tonight, and I want to get your take on it. So if you're over there in the chat room, you know what I'm talking about, and you can share your opinions there. And those of you just listening, you can share your opinions with me as well. You just have to do it in a different mode. But here's what I'm talking about. Have you ever been on social media and found yourself blocked or, okay, I'm speaking specifically of Facebook when I say this, but blocked or unfriended because of something that you're saying? Now, here is the particulars of what I'm talking about. Something I've found rather disturbing, especially of late, is the friends who block you from making comment on their posts simply because you hold to a different opinion about something. Now, I'm not talking about me being verbally abusive or using belittling nastiness or anything like that, but the mere stating of a differing opinion in a thread that is supposed to be open discussion has become a problem. And when one puts an opinionated post up and all their friends fall in line praising their omnipotent insight into whatever the topic is that they're talking about, why is it that a friend that is on their list as well as all those other friends of theirs, why is that friend somebody who is blocked if they don't go along with the opinion that's being expressed by the original poster and by all of their followers? And why is that suddenly becoming somebody who wants to state an opinion that's a little different has become a troll? We've overused that word on the internet and is no longer viable or valuable to the conversation at hand. Now, when somebody puts up a public post, say on Facebook, and it's open for all their friends to see it, it's almost as if there are some people who say, all my friends can see me spouting my opinion, and I'll listen to anything you have to say as long as you agree with me. But if you disagree with me, I'll argue with you for a minute, and then I'll block you or I'll defriend you or I'll shut your view off of this post. So I've come to some conclusions, and there's a bunch of these. It's not an easy conclusion, but they all kind of fall into the same boat. See what you think of this. My conclusion is that the original poster is either A, uninformed, B, agenda-driven, C, close-minded, D, narcissistic on their own level, or E, someone who needs to understand that making a public post is also, that is visible to all their friends, even those that are, and it's open to all their friends because they do that, even if those that are willing to enter the dialogue may not see things the same way. So when you post something that is of an opinionated nature, be it politics, religion, vaccines, conspiracy theories, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, none of us like somebody coming in and going, oh, I don't believe any of that shit. But the problem is that not everybody is that way. Somebody might come in and say, like I do, can you explain to me why you believe that? I don't happen to believe that this is the way you're stating it. Give me a little bit of your insight. Why should I listen to what you have to say about this topic? I'd like to hear. And many times I've found that I get shut down as a result of that. And so let me give you all a tip to start with. If you don't want all of your friends contributing to your posts, perhaps refrain from making your posts public and visible to all your friends, accessible by all of them. That's a pet peeve of mine, and I ran into that this weekend by somebody that I've known for, God, a good 20 years. And I don't even remember what the post was about. But my response was, I don't know if I agree with you on that. What are you thinking? And immediately I was blocked off from the dialogue. Now, maybe that's because they think I'm too opinionated, which I am. I like to hear myself talk, which I do. I have a lot to say, I think. And so when I see a friend state something that I pretty much disagree with from the get-go, from the ground level, I might say, whoa, dude, what you thinking? I never knew this about you. What's on your mind? How have you drawn your conclusions on this? Mostly because everybody else that's posting are those that have, with almost sycophantic fervor, the going along with, yeah, what you said, yeah. But nobody really offers up anything solid. And so I say, hey, that's great. Great opinion. How did you arrive at that? And because they don't want to argue, or they think they're going to get into an argument, or they don't want to have to substantiate their claim, or they don't want to be held accountable for what they say, they just block you. And so I've run into that, and it makes me ask some questions about, can we find more civil ways to have discourse on the internet? Religious discourse, political discourse. How do we find that meeting of the minds, that coming together to discuss something, even if you're on polar opposites of an issue? And so it's not an impossible thing to achieve, even though it sometimes feels that way. My problem is this, is that civility is lacking nowadays. It has gone away. And many times it's from people, if we were to put it in a political arena, it's people say, well, President Trump, who I hate and didn't vote for, has done this, and this, which promotes speaking to each other in an uncivil way. And so therefore I'm going to do it too. And the country's caught on. And I say, well, if it's a bad thing that the president does, then why would you want to mimic his behavior? And so that's the way that questioning would go. That would actually be an example right there. If somebody posted, well, I'm going to treat people uncivilly, I'm going to say my piece, and I'm going to get a little dirty and kick below the belt, punch below the belt, whichever. And because Trump has allowed us to do this with the way he talks to people. Okay, fair enough point. But if you don't like the way the president, I would come in and ask, fair enough. But if you're accusing the president of doing something bad, Why would you want to do the same thing? Now, that's the mode of questioning I would take, where I might say, I disagree with you on that point. Why do you think it's okay to do? My mom always taught me that two wrongs don't make a right, but three rights make a left. So there's a question. So civility, it's generally defined as reasonable, respectful, if not polite and courteous, speech and behavior. That's civility. And although there's always been a chasm in positions and priorities between differing parties on political issues, conservative, liberal, progressives, whatever it might be, the tone and the intensity in disagreement has escalated dramatically in recent years. And the volume has become louder, discourse more coarse, disputes more heated and angry, and conflicts more extreme. And I've seen this especially as people start to polarize themselves in their position, because we are in a time where, frankly, the internet has brought this to us, and this was really the first big real election that was internet what's the word? Not internet based, because there was internet when Obama was the president. There was internet when Bush was the president, but not the way it is today. We've gotten to a point where the internet has really helped elect a president, and or elect officials, or determine political opinions about things. So during the Obama administration, there was this noticeable hardening of partisan positions within the U.S. Congress, where members of the two major parties began to view each other with a greater suspicion, a greater animosity, and treat them more explicitly as adversaries to be rebuffed. Now, subsequently, this disconnect has only gotten worse, and bipartisan compromise, an essential vehicle of functional and effective governance seemed to become extinct. Now, there is something, however, to be said for congressional gridlock, where the different parties involved, the different sides of issues involved. Gridlock in that sense, as I've heard a wag put it once, is a good thing. Because when you have gridlock, you get to hold on to your money a little longer, no matter what's going on. But gridlock is good. This is the way our government was founded. It was meant to be adversarial. It was meant to have conflict. It was meant to be debated, because when they founded this nation, they were looking to avoid tyranny. And so it was meant to be a gridlock, meant to be discussed. You see it in the House of Parliament in Great Britain. You see it here in our own Congress. And so it's no coincidence that this progression coincides with the emergence of social media. As I said, the internet, and the coming to age of the internet, the proliferation of its various platforms, perhaps most notably Facebook. While this issue has concerned me and many others for some time, this is why I want to talk about this today, because I experience this every day. And so, and especially if you are somebody who promotes opinion like I do, you run into this. I run into this all the time, every day, all day long. So, like most people, I have a certain distinct leanings with reference to political philosophy, as you all know, my listeners, and values, and these carry over into my views on social and economic issues. Appreciating how contentious the socio-political climate is on Facebook, I have to make a conscious effort to be judicious in my politically oriented postings. Now again, sometimes I mock people, sometimes I poke the stick. For the most part, though, when I'm conversing with somebody, dialoguing, I work very well to express what I believe to be truth or fact while being polite. I try to never insult the person overtly, unless they call for insult by being abusive and so on. Now, as a result, over time, I tend to post less frequently about politics, and with increasing care about what I put up, unless, of course, I'm poking a stick for a certain reason. Now, against that backdrop, and in response to current events that I post this singular sentence. When you open the door to discriminating against others based on personal beliefs and values, it swings both ways. Now, to me, this, for instance, today, a friend of my daughter's was maintaining that there was something that was said, and Rainey, my wife, went in to the post, and she said, kind of stirring the pot a little, she grabbed onto one section of the post which dealt with how men are useless and needless, and white men especially, over the age of 30. And my wife went in, of course, and she said, yeah, we don't need any men, especially men over 30, white men over 30. And she was kind of poking the stick a little. Somebody came in and said, I can agree with that sentiment. And, yeah, we don't need any men, white men over 30. We don't need them for anything. And I said, in response to that, I said, I said, we all live in a societal bubble. I said, choose your societal bubble. I said, as far as white men being valuable, and the response was, the tables are finally turning, said one woman. And I said, the tables are turning from what? I said, from men being in charge to women being in charge. I said, choose your societal bubble. Both of those are a societal bubble. And I said, if you are contending that it was wrong for men to be in charge, and you think the tables are turning on that, I said, wouldn't you denounce that as well? Because if one gender or sex was wrong, why would the other one make it right? I said, you just trade societal bubbles out. And so it seemed accurate and fair, non-controversial, and I was quickly proven wrong. Oh, by the way, it's when I said the previous statement. When you open the door to discriminating against others based on a personal beliefs and values, it swings both ways. And that was looked at as being not fair, as being controversial, as being inaccurate. And a friend with a diametrically opposed political philosophy pounced on it like a pit bull on a steak, and leading to an exchange of comments during which this person unleashed a barrage of overgeneralizations, innuendo, insults, and some of which had disturbingly racial or personal overtones. And for my part, I attempted to confront the misconceptions and the misinterpretations and the affronts without further escalating what had rapidly become an emotionally charged argument. My response wasn't meant to be emotionally charged. It was meant to be common-sensed. Hey, if we exchange one wrong to replace what we believe is a wrong, aren't we just trying to make two wrongs be a right? And so now, ironically, and I'm not talking about this simple exchange from this morning, but other exchanges I've had like this, I've had them with friends who are real-life friends, not just social media virtual friends. They're in real life, and I've years of friendship with these people. And I know these people very well. Friends with perspectives similar to mine quickly rose to the defense of my post. And me, both, because they saw me being attacked. And I received lovely support and praise for my restraint and my tolerance, to which I replied that my internal reactions are very different, but I know that with some personalities, continuing to engage in partisan back and forth only accelerates conflict and contributes more negativity and toxicity. And I had simply tasted enough of that for a long time. Why do you think Rocky Stucci and I do what we do on Rocky's show? It's because we have opinions and we express them, but we like to lighten up the mood. So tired of the infighting. And a mutual friend commented that this entire thread saddened her. I've seen that many times. This saddens me. Well, it saddens me too. So there's a role of cognitive distortions which we have to look at here. A number of psychological phenomena influence people to dig further into their existing positions. effectively strengthening them, often even to the fact of evidence that contradicts those positions, making the acknowledgement of divergent viewpoints, and in turn, finding common ground and compromise less likely. And among these is a range of cognitive distortions. This is what I mean by that. Cognitive distortions represent natural tendencies toward irrational thoughts and beliefs. And people have related to themselves and the world around them, and they've reinforced these things over time. And these thoughts and belief patterns are irrational in that they're based on assumptions and incomplete information. They're often subtle, they're difficult to recognize, particularly when they're a regular feature of our day-to-day thinking, and especially when we do some of that in a social media setting. Global labeling occurs when we generalize one or two qualities into a negative overall judgment. We assign judgments of value to others and to ourselves based on one instance or a limited experience. Instead of describing the specifics of a person, we label them globally. In the current political dichotomy that exists in this nation, this includes the increasing use of pejorative labels. Because he's a Republican or a conservative, he's a fascist and supports white nationalism. Because she's a Democrat or a liberal or a progressive, she's a libtard and supports unrestricted immigration, open borders. Because I am a white male over the age of 30, I obviously lean in one direction or the other, and my judgment doesn't matter anymore. Overgeneralizations are what these are. And overgeneralization takes limited experience and information, and it generalizes it into an overall pattern or set of characteristics. And this can lead to sweeping generalizations to describe people with different or opposing positions. All Republicans are like this: ignorant, selfish, racist, or racist sympathizing. And all Democrats and liberals are like this: elitist, communist, snowflakes. So disqualifying the positive may acknowledge the existence of positive qualities, but minimizes or outright rejects their relevance. This is an especially malignant distortion, since it can fuel the communion of negative perceptions, even in the face of ample evidence to the contrary. For example, in Republican conservative circles, Obamacare has been demonized, even though its model originated at the Heritage Foundation, a well-known conservative think tank. Now, I have a lot of problems with Obamacare, but I didn't demonize it. I said there's problems with it. It's got to be fixed. And while it had some clear drawbacks, it nonetheless resulted in tens of millions of more people having health insurance, provided coverage for those with pre-existing conditions, and allowed children to be covered by their parents. Health insurance to the age of 26. I remember I bristled at that when that came out. When you're 26, Napoleon Bonaparte led all the generals of France by age 23. And so we live in a day and age where 26-year-olds obviously still need their parents' medical coverage. I had a problem with that. And so where I look at Obamacare, I look at any universal health plan that is owned and operated by the federal government as being unconstitutional. That was my position on it. Did it do good things for people? Yes. So it needed some restructuring. It needed a way to make it work better. The federal government should never be in the position of selling a product to people or taxing or penalizing you if you don't buy it. So those were my problems with it, even though it had some good results to it. So mind reading manifests as the inaccurate belief that we know what another person is thinking or what their motivations are. Of course, it's possible to have an idea of what other people are thinking, but this distortion refers to the negative interpretations that we jump to about somebody else when they're saying something. We often assume the worst, don't we? You been there? We look at somebody, we hear something, oh, I already know what that person's going to say. We assume the worst. That's human nature to do that. Republicans and conservatives are motivated by greed and disdain for poor and non-whites. Democrat liberals are motivated by hatred of the wealthy and the belief that they know better than anybody else. So, that's what we do when we jump to those mind-reading conclusions. We might be right on some of those things, but that's what we do. Remember, we're talking about how to be civil in social debate. Emotional reasoning refers to the acceptance of one's feelings as facts. And you know what? I'm noticing that I'm running up against time. Let's hit emotional reasoning when I come back. Sit tight. 2 minutes. Be right back. All right, folks, we're back from that break. Thanks for sitting there waiting. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. You can listen to the simulcast of this, watch the simulcast in video, and join the live chat room during this show at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts, my YouTube channel. Now, let's jump right back into this because I had to cut it off kind of quick on the other end because we were running up against the break. So I started talking about emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning refers to the acceptance of one's feelings as fact. Now, we run into a lot of that. I've had discussions with people who will say, well, look, but the numbers don't work to support your argument. The facts of the matter don't work. Well, I still feel that. Well, I still believe that. So that's using emotional reasoning, is using your emotions, your feelings, to try to substantiate your position on something. If I feel it, it must be true. So when we encounter posts or memes on social media that support our views and fit how we feel, we tend to believe that, rather than think our ways through it, rather than apply critical thinking to it. So today's 24/7 society has this myriad of platforms that express and reinforce these cognitive distortions. Negativity on social media is nearly constant. Every time I open up my social media, I don't see... Now, many of the people here, by the way, in our chat room, some of you deliberately post very positive things every day. It's for the same reason Rocky and I in the Situation Room do what we do. It's to counter the negativity. And so continuous exposure to anger, fear, intense negativity creates stress that keeps the human fight, flight, freeze response stuck in the on position, triggering toxic neurochemical reactions in the body that lead to, wait for it, more fear, more anger, and more stress. So, moreover, empathy, our sense of commonality and connection with others, that acts as this mediating influence, tends to evaporate in online communication, where it's so much easier to dismiss, to insult, to degrade, or humiliate someone else. I saw a great little meme this morning, and I posted it on my Facebook. It shows Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday from Tombstone. You remember, I'm your Huckleberry. And he said, "Sir," he said, let me look at it just to make sure I get it right. Hold on here a second. Let me call up my Facebook post. Here it is. He says, "Sir, if I'm to be insulted, I must first value your opinion." And that's really the truth. That's the way we are. Online communication evaporates, and it's easier to dismiss, to insult, to degrade or humiliate somebody when we don't need to know anything about them, when we don't need to focus on being civil. So there are ways forward to a more reasoned and civil political discourse, especially when you're online. Now, I'm going to frame these approaches in terms of we, because this process involves all of us. It involves me in the way I act. It involves you in the way you act, and everybody that we socialize with. And the quality of our overall environment, including our political dialogue, is a function of what each and every one of us contributes to it. And there are times our contributions are helpful and healthy, and times when they're far away from that. As individuals, we can consciously set the intention to contribute to the totality of our environment as positively as we're capable of, knowing that our capabilities fluctuate from day to day and even moment to moment. Sometimes I just want to slap the shit out of somebody, but sometimes that's when I have to apply civility on top of what I might be feeling. So, here, let me give you these, and I've got them bullet pointed here, and there's several of them. Here's what we can do to find a way forward to more civilized, more reasoned discourse in social media and regarding politics, religion, whatever it might be. Number one, we need to strive for conscious awareness of our own internal emotional actions and reactions. And we need to realize when we're caught up in one of the cognitive distortions that we've gone through and that we've described above. And so, catching yourself. This is where I would tie it back into other things that we've talked about. Being in the now. Being aware, being awake, not woke, being awake. Living in this moment and understanding where you are in this moment. So as I tell my son when he screams about things that we make him do, like we make him pick up his mess, and I tell him, calm your emotions, son. I'm asking you to pick up a thing you left on the floor. I'm not asking you to cut off a limb for me. And so govern yourself, I tell my kids. And so we need to strive for this conscious awareness of our own internal emotional actions and reactions to things. And we have to realize that we can get caught up in the cognitive distortions as well. 2, we need to acknowledge to ourselves and to others the value and the validity, at least, of aspects of opposing positions and points of view. Now, this is something I learned in marital counseling a very long time ago. The question is asked, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? And we've talked about that here before. And so the idea is, when in an argument, even when you strongly believe what you believe and the other person doesn't, you believe they're wrong about something, acknowledging them, acknowledging their belief and their point of view goes a long way to bringing an argument down a notch. So perhaps this is what we need to do. We need to acknowledge the downsides and the weaknesses, and we need to acknowledge to ourselves the value and validity of the other person's argument. Even if we don't agree with it, find something to validate. Conversely, number 3, we need to acknowledge to ourselves and others the downsides and weaknesses of and constructive criticism of our own point of view or our own side of something. Which, now, both of these things are things I engage in. They don't come out right away sometimes, but I will always say, look, valid point. And that's pretty general. I'm just saying, look, that's a valid argument. Let me propose something to you. What about this? What about this? And and then recognize I might not be right about everything, but this is the way I see it. Where do you think? What do you think of trying to combine these things together? So number 4, we need to endeavor to fact check. Sometimes the information and memes we encounter online that fit seductively with our particular partisan leanings and raise our pulse and blood pressures are simply inaccurate. And other times news items may be accurate but actually occurred in the past. 9 months or even a year ago. I've seen that before. I've done it before. See a great article and an emotional response, I'll post this article. Then find out it's talking about things that happened 4 years ago, not in the present situation. And so we all need to take a breath and check what you're saying. Make sure you know what you're talking about. I had somebody this morning want to get into a minor religious debate with me, and it was very minor. It's only a couple of little posts back and forth. They were insisting that they were saying that somebody got on them because they posted that, we're all going to have to answer to God for our actions. And I said, maybe, to this person. I've seen this person before. I didn't feel that there was an adversarial relationship there of any kind. And they said, most certainly fact, Jack, was the response. And I said, well, that's factual from your context. I admit that is an issue of faith and belief. I said, but what if there's a different way of viewing how God acts? There's a different paradigm, maybe. And I don't remember if I even stuck around to see if there was a response to that, because I had other things to do. And I didn't think that we were fighting about anything, so I really didn't stick around to look. But this is what I mean by that, is that that acknowledging that we need to fact-check things, especially when it comes to spiritual or religious points of view. You can state this, but it's really what you believe about something. Your own personal faith leads you to a conclusion. That is not necessarily fact. That's fact for you within your paradigm, within your dogma, within your whatever. So you see what I mean by that? Sometimes stating something like, God is going to judge you for that, that's from within a paradigm. And to state that, we could be wrong about that because none of us has been there. None of us knows. So we don't know if God's going to judge them for their action. And so we have to fact check things before we say them, even on a religious level sometimes. Number 5, I think it is, as challenging as it might be, we need to expose ourselves to alternate and opposing perspectives and the people who express them. And when possible, try to keep an open mind to those views that other people express. Use an open heart to those people who espouse them. Now, that's sometimes hard if you think somebody's a dumbass. It's really hard to keep an open mind about their points of view. I have some very dear friends of mine that are dyed-in-the-wool liberal progressives on this side of the spectrum, way on that end of the spectrum from me. They remain my friends. I don't base my friendship with them on the basis of our political points of view. We do argue now and then, but I keep the arguing to a civil, usually between us because we're used to doing this. I might come in and say, wait, I disagree with that completely. Here's what I think. And so we need to expose ourselves to other ideas in order to, even if we know they're wrong or find out they're wrong, we expose ourselves so we know what we're talking about. And we need to really keep an open mind to the views of other people. Sometimes we are so politically diametrically opposed that even a good idea presented from somebody who is on the other end of the political spectrum might be something that we'll ignore because of what we know about their political stance. And that's getting into their heads, isn't it? No, we talked about earlier. That's this global judging. So, number 6, we need to be aware of our attachment to the need to be right all the time, and how this need usually obstructs our ability to be centered and to feel at peace about what we're trying to talk about. Now, in my case, I am right all the time. So, when you're somebody who's as right as I am all the time, it's hard to look at that from a different point of view. And of course, I'm jesting for those of you who can't see my facial expressions or are taking me too literally. But we need to be aware of our attachment to be right. It's like I said earlier, in the marital counseling, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? And the point he was making is that if you keep pushing that your viewpoint and your opinion is right, you may just be right all the way into the dissolution of this marriage. And so you have to find ways to be civil, ways to find a path to the other side. Both parties need to do this. But of course, you're not responsible for anybody else except yourself when it comes to determining that you're going to be that way. Number 7, we need to exercise discernment. Discernment. Knowing that we can choose not to participate in contentious discussions online or in person. And if we've already started down such a path, we can choose to opt out at any time. I've been there. And I've been there where I haven't chosen to opt out. Sometimes the opting out, even though somebody would constantly over and over and over and over again criticize your point of view, you said, okay, I'm done. And they go, oh, I guess you're a coward and you can't stand for your cause. It's like, you know what? Shut up. Because that's all I've done for the last 2 hours of wasted time that I'll never get back again, is argue with you about this point, debate this point with you. And if I'm not making any headway, then I'll back out of the conversation. There's nothing to get. And so we need to learn when to back down. We need to learn when that path is the better path. And number 8, or is it 9 now I'm at, we need to learn and practice the skill of agreeing to disagree with as much grace as we can mobilize, and to disagree without being overtly disagreeable. So those are the things that we can do to find paths forward to a more reasoned, a more civil discourse. I said to somebody, and it's one of these same people that I already mentioned, they said something to the effect of, if you agree with the sitting president and you support him, then I can no longer support you as my friend and you need to take yourself off of my friends list. There's social media for you. Now, would that same person say to me, if we were all sitting together in our group of friends, and say, if anybody here doesn't believe the item that I'm putting forward in my belief system on things, then you should just put your beer down and leave this tavern? I mean, that would be the real life equivalent of that. You don't see many people do that. So in social media, though, it seems to be okay. And this is a long-standing friend I'm talking about. Many years. I've known them in real life. Real life outside of social media. So these are the things that, agreeing to disagree, we can do that to a certain point. Okay. I sometimes say to people, it's not worth getting in a big argument over, so I'm going to back out of the conversation. Let's not ruin our friendship. And so maybe these are all things that we can do to kind of make this thing happen. To make civility return. Can we bring civility back once it's gone? Sure we can. Some people will say, well, we've gone too far. We're over that line too far. And I don't think we are. I think we're over the line so much that we're stopping to realize we've gone way over the line as a society, as a cultural thing with us. And so we've got to find ways to combat that, starting with the way we approach things. Now, I'm an opinionated person, so how do I get that across to people? It's by being a decent human being, not being an asshole, using common sense. Okay, I'm presenting this to you, and I'm debating you because I disagree with your point of view. I disagree with your foundational premise. Now, that doesn't mean I dislike you as a person. So, let's get along. So, give it a try, folks. But all of this leads into what I really wanted to start trying to get into a little bit for today, and maybe obviously over into tomorrow a bit, is talking about conspiracy theories and delusions and the internet. Conspiracy theories in general, delusions in general, the internet, and how that's applied. So when epistemic mistrust leads us down the misinformation rabbit hole, what are we going to do? Are we the conspiracy theorist? Are we responding to conspiracy theories? I've heard all kinds of conspiracy theories about the Wuhan virus, the coronavirus. The first being the first name, the Wuhan virus. We know where it came from. Conspiracy theory would be, Bill Gates was actually in cahoots with whoever to create this virus to try to eliminate a third of the world's population, which he has promoted before in the past, and to see how much restriction we can put over the masses in our country. That's a conspiracy theory, and I don't buy it. Number one, I think there might be elements in there that might have some truth to them. There's definitely elements that don't. So this is what I mean by conspiracy theory, or flat earth theory, or other things like that. So Stephen Jobs wrote this in Wired magazine 25 years ago. Remember Steve Jobs? He was the late Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer. And he said, when you're young, you look at television and think, there's a conspiracy. The networks have conspired to dumb us down. But when you get a little older, you realize that's not true. The networks are in the business to give people exactly what they want. No, isn't that the truth? They're also, I think one of the conspiracies with television is that it's all about advertising. Yeah, networks need to make money, so they advertise. They're trying to draw you into advertising. I get that. So conspiracy theories, they're a hot topic these days. There's increasing relevance in our post-truth world. The recovering political reporter turned freelance writer Jake Flanagan reached out for an interview on the topic for an article in the New Republic. And here's the full transcript of the interview, and I'm going to read this to you and give you some ideas of what was said there and make some comment here. We've only got a few minutes left. So is it fair to say, let me ask you folks, is it fair to say that the internet, and specifically social media, can indulge and or exacerbate an inclination toward delusion? Do you think that? Do you think the internet can add? Look at your friends. Look at the things we all talk about. Some of us are in those circles of ghost hunting or cryptids, cryptozoology, or aliens and things like. We take all of these things. Look at those categories. Do you think the internet and social media indulges and exacerbates an inclination toward delusion on these things? Ask yourself that question. Now, concerning beliefs, what the internet does in a previously unprecedented way is to provide users with nearly inexhaustible sources of evidence, and I use the quotation marks around it, and agreement for even the most fringe beliefs that you or I can imagine. A few decades ago, if you revealed an unusual belief or a conspiracy theory over beers at the local bar, your friends would probably laugh you out of the place. It's funny, we just talked about being told to get out if you disagree. Now you can hole up in the privacy of your own room in front of a computer as anonymous users, and you can find like-minded individuals on the other side of the world. So the things that your family and your friends might think you're a little wacky about, boy, you can find like-minded people all over the world. Now you can communicate with them in the darkness of your mom's basement with your black-lit Led Zeppelin posters burning in the background. So the problem, of course, is that all too often the evidence that you find online consists of misinformation, of lies, trolling, and that's mistaken as fact. They're taken as fact. We look at them and say, this is fact. Whereas we previously respected information published in books and academic journals, in print newspapers at times, back in the olden days maybe. The internet has created and by the way, some of you listening maybe don't even know what a newspaper is because you've grown up in the internet age. I used to deliver newspapers as a boy. I worked for the big Minneapolis Star-Tribune as a district sales manager. Very back in my college days. We're talking way back, and I was 20 and 21 when I worked for them. So, meaning times have changed since I was a kid. The way we get our information has changed. While we respected all these other written forms, printed forms of things, the internet has created a kind of false equivalence, whereby all sources of information are treated on equal footing. Opinions are regarded as valid as facts. They're alternative truths. And this has been described as a democratization of knowledge, which has led to the death of experts and expertise. While many people think of this as a kind of coup, it's left us very vulnerable to believing strongly in things that aren't true. And I see we're just about out of time here, so I'm going to wrap this for tonight. We're going to pick it up again tomorrow. But let me ask you, how do you treat the information you find on the internet? Be it political or religious or in those other strange categories we talked about, areas of the unknown. The internet, of course, it's almost become cliche. Well, I know it's true. I found it on the internet. Now we all know that just isn't so. And that's just not the way things work. That's not the truth of matters many times. So we have to use some of these other things that we talked about earlier about civil discourse and apply it to how we suck in information. And there's so much more to this. I've barely just introduced this topic. We'll hit it again tomorrow. So folks, stay tuned for 23 hours and we'll be right back.